Hi, everyone. So
Hello.
today we have office hours, right? And we don't have many office hours. So usually we have like 2 or 3 during the entire cohort, sometimes even less. So today we are going to talk with Arsalan about Bruin, about data platforms. So feel free to ask any question you want. And there is the link in the live chat. Questions that you see here, they are from our previous office hours. So they were on during module 2 when Will and we spoke. So some of them were about Kestra. Then I also see some questions that are about week 3. So we will focus mostly on data platforms and Bruin, but also as we go along, we may tackle some of the other things. But before we start, so maybe you can introduce yourself. Like, can you tell us a few words about yourself, like what you're doing, and maybe also about the Bruin
Yeah, absolutely. So,
platform?
hello, everyone. I can't see you, but I think you can see me. So, my name is Arslan. You can also call me Arsi. So, I have joined Bruin as a developer advocate. I think it's been almost 2 months now. But I've actually been familiar with Bruin for the past 2 years. I was using Bruin's platform at my previous company, and I was in charge, I was managing the data engineering team there. And we were a team of 4 or 5 data engineers, and we built our entire data infrastructure on top of Bruin. But essentially, Bruin has two sides. So there's an open source side, which right now I'm responsible for, and we have the cloud version, which is the more the paid version kind of the data platform. And essentially, what we are trying to achieve is like an end-to-end single like go-to place for data engineering tool sets, and that includes everything from your ingestion side. So that's similar to like Airbyte, for example, the orchestration side, which is like Airflow, and the transformation side, which is like dbt, as well as the data quality, which is similar to Great Expectations or SODA. So the belief is kind of that, especially in smaller data engineering teams, you don't have the resources and capabilities to have, 5, 6 different people working on developing these different tools, integrating them into each other, setting up all the servers, the infrastructure, all of that stuff. And Bruin takes care of that by just kind of having one single interface where everything lives inside the same project, has the same kind of language and the same style as well. And for me personally, like at my previous company, it worked out really well because we were a small team. Actually, when I first joined, I was the only data engineer, and I needed to. It was there was a huge amount of data that we were processing. It was essentially a machine learning AI company, so they were doing a lot of AI stuff, training, doing inference, and having a tool like this was really helpful. And it's my first time doing developer advocacy and developer relations, so I'm really excited to teach people how to use our product, get feedback from them. This was my first time making tutorials, actually, so I hope everyone was patient with me and the tutorials, and keep the feedback, please, coming as well. And I guess just lastly, about my background. So I started off my career in data analysis, but I was doing a lot of data engineering work myself. And then I realized I actually liked the backend kind of side of data. So I learned data engineering through boot camps and courses and similar like courses like Zoomcamp. That's how I actually learned data engineering. And having that actually on my resume that I went to these boot camps was one of the reasons why some employers took a chance on me and were like, hey, you know data and you have these certifications, not like certifications, but like these boot camps and courses. So it really helped. And I support everyone doing this Zoom camp as well. I think it will be really good for your career.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I'm really curious. So you mentioned what Bruin is, and the Bruin is kind of everything, right? I mean, you mentioned it's ingestion like Airbyte, it's transformation like dbt, it's orchestration like Airflow, right? Data quality you mentioned like Great Expectations. So it's many things in one place. And when do we need a data platform? When I work at a small startup, when I work at bigger organization, like how do I know that this is the answer versus how do I know that I need separate tools?
I mean, I think the short answer is that it really depends, but that's a really bad answer. So I think where we've
Depends
seen
on what, yeah.
Yeah, I think where we've seen it like most successful is in kind of companies that are data heavy, but they are kind of like either early stages in their data infrastructure or they're in a transition phase. So, and this goes both for like our open source users, which we have like, companies that are actually using our open source version and or the paid version. So in both cases, they are either like developing their data infrastructure and they just want to get started. They don't want to spend, 6 months, 1 year developing like an entire infrastructure, setting up clusters and having airflow like integrations and all of these things. So those things usually take a long time and you need a few people to do it. So where we've
Mhm.
seen and shine is having people want to just get started earlier and only have like 1 week 1 month to kind of set everything up, and or they're migrating over to like a new infrastructure and they just want the migration to be really quick. So that's the I think 90, 80, 90% of the cases, it's been that. And for bigger companies, I think the value proposition for them is that you are not really vendor locked in. And I think that's a key point for a lot of companies where they want something light. They want something that if like, we're in a transition phase, we want to give something a try and we don't want to be locked into the decisions we make. And I think that's actually personally, I think that's where the industry is going, because a lot of companies like things move so fast that if you're locked into specific tools that takes 6 months to migrate out of, it really slows down your company's evolution and the growth of your company. So people want to use tools that they can, if tomorrow everything completely changes and disrupts everything, you can just say, okay, you know what, let's just move out of this tool. So those are the things that I see it most often.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Thank you. And one of the comments I saw in Slack was, I'm kind of citing it right now. So there is some truth to that. Maybe you agree. So that Bruin feels like a less mature version of DBT, and which, because like it's DBT is a very mature and established product, right? And Bruin is a few years old, right? But maybe you can comment on that because Bruin can do a lot more, but this was interesting to me that it was the first reaction that Bruin equals DBT. So do you think first of all, what do you think about this? And second, do you think that this could be the first use case how you can actually start with a data platform? Like, should you focus on transformation? Should you focus on ingestion? On what exactly you should focus on?
Right. So regarding that comment, I think it might. I mean, of course, like this, the size of the company and the age of the company is not at the same level as DBT, but also DBT started from a similar size and they grew with the community. They had developers test everything, give a lot of feedback, complain about the tutorials and the documentation and everything, until now where you have a DBT university. They have lots of tutorials and lots of documentation as well. And I think that's the reason why like I joined this company, was that the open source side was available for the past few years, but there weren't as much documentations and as much tutorials and stuff like that. And that's where like I'm trying to grow it. So of course the feedback is true. Our documentation and our like videos and content and stuff is definitely premature. But every company, every open source tool starts at some place, and this is where we started. And I'm hoping that with the community, we can grow it together.
Mm. And when you leave a comment like that, it's always helpful to actually say, hey, like I look at this page and I'm confused because this step is not clear to me, right? And then it's very specific feedback. So Arsalan and his colleagues, they can actually make it better, right? So then it's very easy or it's easier for them to um, have an action after that, to have a clear follow-up or clear action point after this. Okay, it's clear to me that this is not clear and this is how I can improve it. And I saw comments like that in Slack throughout last week. So I hope it's very useful for you. But I guess it also keeps you busy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely keeps me on my toes. And this past week, we were actually in Berlin at a conference, and at that conference, I was seeing these comments. I was quickly trying to respond to them, and but it's been amazing because I think we needed to like sometimes you need to launch something. Like I was thinking about this tutorial and trying to like build it and stuff for the past 2 months, but then at some point you just have to put it out there and just have people comment on it. And I hope that we've been quick enough at responding. We've probably pushed something like more than 10, 12 big changes to our documentation. We've released more videos and tutorials and stuff, and really trying to quickly patch any bugs or any issues that we see with the tool as well. So that's kind of like also what's different between us versus like some of the other bigger companies is that you still have the team that's, young, not in terms of age, but in terms of like maturity of the team, where they're very involved. We have our like, senior engineers in these Slack channels, in these threads, reading every message, responding immediately, going and recreating the issues, creating a patch for them. And everyone is very responsive. So I think that's one thing that really differs with bigger companies is that you have the entire team essentially right here, right now, responding to all of the comments.
And we're doing this model, we're continuing doing this model throughout this week too. So keep the feedback coming, keep people at Bruin busy, so they will appreciate your feedback. Okay, and regarding the other part of the question that I asked, so it was like a loaded question, I realize. So if I want to start with a data platform, what should I start with? Since the for some people there was this, okay, Bruin looks like dbt. So do you think transformation is what people should start with, or it should be actually like all of these things, ingestion, transformation, and like all the rest?
Good question. I guess maybe I'll give two different paths or two different answers. So one path is, let's say you already are using something like dbt. So you have your SQL assets or models, and you just want something to take care of the rest of the pipeline. I think that's where you can come in, where you have Bruin as kind of the scheduler, as the orchestrator, and you can use it that way. And there are ways of like, either using dbt or bringing over your transformations to Bruin. Or the other pathway is that you don't have any of those models and your SQL queries and anything already developed, and you want to develop them. So you will most likely start off with that, and you're just running a single query, and you just want it to be materialized in the database, and then you add more queries and assets, and then now you have a pipeline. So you kind of start from that pathway. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think it really depends.
You did.
Where
You did, thank you. And also, like you said, okay, if I have a dbt project, existing dbt project, then I can easily start, what did you say, migrating to Bruin, right? Or using it from Bruin. But why would I want to do this? Like, what is the advantage? Because I know, like in dbt, you still need it to have some sort of scheduler, right? That's one of the reasons I want to do this, right? Or what else?
I mean, I don't, without getting too opinionated, I think I've used dbt for like a very long time, for years, and I find that I think it has improved a lot. So I haven't really used it in the past like couple years that much, but I think they improved a lot, and they have, for example, an extension similar to Bruin now. They have dbt Fusion, which takes care of a lot of the previous bugs and issues that they had. But at that time when I was using it, the development environment was very difficult. Like you couldn't really understand, the code wasn't as readable. I personally like when the code is very readable, very easy to like understand. In Bruin, when you write a query, that's exactly the query that's going to run. The only thing that Bruin will parse and compile is the materialization stuff. So it will insert or create or replace or something like that at the beginning. And you can see that right in the panel in your IDE. Whereas with dbt, I would have to go in the folders, find the parsed compiled versions and the raw version, and everything there was like an over usage of Jinja in the code, and they also kind of promote creating like Jinja macros and stuff, which is really nice, but it makes the code again very unreadable. And I personally like didn't really like that kind of development environment. I don't know what it looks like nowadays, to be honest with you. But that was one of the main reasons where I and many other people that I know use Bruin preferred the way that Bruin does it. And second thing I will add to that is that at my previous workplace, we actually migrated over from dbt over to Bruin. and it took only 2 or 3 days because and this was before Cursor or any agents and stuff, where I was writing everything from scratch. And there was definitely no Bruin MCP to just have the context of Bruin as well. And it took me 1 or 2 days because I just changed the configurations from DBT over to Bruin and removed some of the Jinja formatted table names and macros and things like that. And yeah, in general, so I think the number one thing, just to summarize, is that I find the code much easier to your queries and your entire lineage and everything is much easier to navigate and read, especially when the team grows and you have 5, 6, 10 different people writing assets and writing models and stuff. It's really easy to read it that way. And second thing is that the development environment was built by data people, so they knew the pain points of how it is working in a data team and how it is kind of reading the code or testing and running everything. So it was built from the ground up for data people, essentially.
And so, yeah, thank you for answering. So then I see that we have a few Bruin-specific questions. Then am also curious to know your opinion about other questions, and I'll ask them. But I want to first focus on Bruin-specific. So Daniel is asking how scalable is Bruin for heavy workloads, and what is the key difference between the open source and cloud versions? So we have two questions here. Let's start with the first one, and maybe we can start by defining what a heavy workload is, right? And then talk about how scalable Bruin is for this kind of workflows.
Yeah, so I will say for the I mean, these two questions actually go hand in hand. So
Okay.
I think we have definitely we have active users of Bruin that have quote unquote heavy workflows. And what that essentially, how I would define that is you have a data warehouse or data lake that has starting from tens of terabytes to hundreds of terabytes, or even going into the petabyte level data. So that's what essentially what we would call big data. And in those cases, your data warehouse is used as the SQL engine. So Bruin is really just giving the commands of run this query, run that query, and all of that stuff. So in that sense, Bruin's infrastructure is not actually, it doesn't need to scale up as the data set scales up. On the Python side of things, Bruin has, again, these are all related to the cloud version. Bruin has different server sizes, so instance sizes. And depending on the workload, we have teams that are actually running their machine learning inference and even training on Bruin infrastructure. So they're building data pipelines that are specifically, for example, getting some data, triggering a training workflow and training the data and outputting a training model into a bucket or something. So kind of the more ML ops side of things. And even in those cases where they need big instances, they need they're not doing any GPU training, but they're just heavily relying on CPU and RAM. So in those cases, they use the largest size of instances, and they are doing training, automated training continuously, and then they also have their inference pipelines running as well. So we have seen kind of those types of heavy workflows. And one more thing I will add in terms of the definition of a heavy workload is the number of assets and pipelines and the dependencies in between them. So we have some clients that have 50 different pipelines and let's say 500 or more assets. And these have complicated schedules. Some of them are sensor based, some of them are, for example, minute based. And then you have these different pipelines with different schedules have dependencies on each other. And Bruin kind of inherently has this data contract concept where this pipeline will wait for specific contracts or a specific interval to be completed by another pipeline. And once that's done, it will trigger this pipeline. So that's another example of a very heavy or complex workflow where you have lots of pipelines, different schedules, very convoluted logic in terms of their dependencies and how they are triggered. And we've seen that perform, and companies are relying on our infrastructure essentially for their products and for their services and stuff. So I think in short, we have a lot of examples of companies using Bruin for those heavy workflows. They are using Bruin Cloud, which will automatically scale the infrastructure according to how many pipelines, how many assets you have running. And on the open source side of things, it's scalable as much as you can scale your infrastructure. So because it will be self-hosted, if you just have a single server running all of your pipelines, there will be some times where your resources are underutilized, and there will be some times where your different pipelines, for example, are competing for RAM and for cores. So I think if you're running it on a single server, then you will face that problem. But we also have some companies that are using the open source version, and they have basically created their own DevOps version of things where they are spinning up servers for when the pipeline is triggered. So they have kind of like a central server that is acting as the orchestrator and saying, okay, spin up a server and deploy this pipeline and run this pipeline on that server and then shut it down when it's done. So they are taking care of that like data ops side of things in that way. But we don't have as much visibility in those use cases because they're using the open source version. So we don't really get any detailed telemetry of how they're.
Yeah, I imagine this could be something like Kubernetes, right? So if I have, I don't know, like a pipeline that I need to process to execute, and this is a heavy pipeline, a heavy job, then I just submit a Kubernetes job to my Kubernetes cluster, right? And then Kubernetes is taking care of allocating the right resources for this job, running then this job, and then saying, okay, this job is done or this is not done, you need to retry it, right? Or using something like AWS Batch, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. So we have, we have at least, I think, two companies that are in Europe. They're kind of like small to mid-sized startups that are completely using our open source version, and they've developed their entire like Kubernetes infrastructure and everything based on and they're using Bruin on top of that. So there's definitely like use cases, and I'm really curious if anyone else does that. I would love to speak to you and find out how you're doing that. So
Because you mentioned you don't have visibility because like somebody just downloaded and starts using it, and then you don't really know, right? Because they are not knocking your door and saying, "Hey, like we're using Kubernetes with Bruin," right?
yeah, exactly. I think we only know like that. I'm kind of estimating two different teams are doing this because of the types of questions that we're getting from them in our Slack and in our kind of community. Where we're like, okay, these people are actually they've built an infrastructure on top of this, and they have their entire data pipelines running using Bruin, but they're not a paid user. So they're somehow doing this, and doesn't seem like they're running everything on a single server. So that's kind of like how we're inferring that.
So you mentioned community. So if I go to your website, which is getbruin.com, then this is the thing I need to click, right? And then if anyone is using Bruin and want to share their story with you, this is how they can get in touch. Or in fact, if they have any question, because this course will end soon, like this module will end this week, and some of the course participants might want to ask you questions, right? And this is the best way to get in contact with you, right?
Exactly. Please join our Slack community, ask us questions. Feel free to also post your projects there, brag about them, and we also see your LinkedIn posts as well. We're trying to interact with you there too. And lastly, on GitHub too, make sure to star our repo. Feel free to create issues. It's completely open source, so you can also push your own changes as well. We have a lot of people contributing to our project, so feel free to start it and join the conversation there too.
There was a commit 2 minutes ago. Okay. So yeah, CI works. Okay. Uh, so this is just a thought. Like when I open the website, it looks like you're a Slack plugin.
Yeah, so we are right now testing like a new feature that we have developed. So it's an integration into Slack or other kind of communication channels, and we have our web UI as well. So actually, for people that are registered for our cloud service, you will get access to a free tier for now that you can use it. And there is an AI agent there too that you can ask it data engineering questions. So, for example, when did this pipeline ran? Was the run successful? This and that, or you can ask it like data analysis questions too. So it will have access to your data. I mean, access, but I mean, because you gave it the keys to create or whatever data warehouse you're using, and it will essentially draft a query based on your prompt, run it against your data warehouse, and give you the results. So we've seen a lot of interest in that area of things. That's why we're leaning in a little bit more on the commercial side, on that side. That's why you see a lot of this AI data and analyst kind of.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. But yeah, please, everyone, I'll share the link now with you. Give a star, then come back, and you also I'll share this link. So this is how you can find the community and join it too. Okay. But what is like there was this part. What is the key difference between open source and cloud? So I think you answered that, but like let me reiterate on that to make sure that I got everything right. So open source, I host it myself, so I have to take care of all the infrastructure, scale it with my workloads, and downscale when there is no workload. So I have to manage this all myself. While in the cloud, you take care of that. And like if I have any heavy things like be training a neural network or whatever, well, as long as I don't need a GPU, I can just write the code in Python and then you would take care of executing it. Is it correct? Or there is more?
Exactly. Actually, the cloud version is using the open source tool. So there
Mhm.
is no feature that is available in the cloud that is not available in the open source version. The only thing is the managed infrastructure. So everything else
Okay.
is.
Mhm. So basically what you do is like you take this and you run this, right? So there is no private Bruin repo that is adding some extra features on top.
The only private repo that is related to the cloud is the UI.
Mm.
And uh, yeah, the rest is really just a version of this, a copy of this, a clone of this is essentially deployed there.
Do you know how this logo appeared? Why it's a bear, right?
It's a Bruin bear. That's a good question. I think our co-founder Burak would be able to answer that better, but I don't know the.
Where's he based? Is he in because his LinkedIn says London, but I thought he was from Berlin.
He's kind of like London, Berlin, Istanbul, so he's in all three places at the same time.
See? Okay, well, maybe it's Berlin related because Berlin is like bear is the
I mean, the
symbol of
company
Berlin.
technically started in Berlin. The team was in Berlin when they created Bruin. So everyone always assumes it's related to the Berlin Bear or something related to that. But
That's my association. I don't know because I met you like people from Bruin. I met you in Berlin. I think it was meetups. Yeah.
right.
Anyways, what else we have? So I think we answered. I saw another Bruin related question. Where is it? Yeah, this one. Is there a company size for which Bruin works well compared to Airflow, dbt, Great Expectation Stack? I want to know at what point Bruin would fall short compared to the others. I think we partly answered that at the beginning. It was my questions, right? But maybe for Leonardo, we can reiterate on that.
Yeah, I think the ideal size is companies around like 500 to 200 people, where their data team is like anywhere from 5 to 20 people. That's kind of the sweet spot right now where we see the best use case for Bruin. But we also have seen people like companies much larger and much smaller also using it. So I think in a very short summary, that's kind of the answer.
Mhm. Well, I worked at a large company, and what we were doing is re-implementing everything from scratch. And I personally hated it. Like, why implement dbt from scratch on top of Airflow if you could just take dbt, right? I mean, back then dbt wasn't like a super widespread thing, but I'm not sure if this mentality, let's implement everything from scratch, is really scalable. I mean, in some cases, it may make sense, like when you're a very big company and you want to have everything in-house. But like when everything is in one place, why not take it, right? And then if Bruin solves all the problems, like you have the ingestion there, you have workflows there, you have transformation there, you have data quality there, um, just take it, right? So why stitch things together?
Yeah, I mean, I will say something maybe slightly controversial, but this is just my opinion. But I think it's for people's like resume and CV kind of thing, because those brand names have reputation. having them on your resume is much better. I say that from a like I was in that same exact position at a previous company. We were migrating things over from kind of like built-in tools that we had from like legacy infrastructure over to like new products, and we evaluated different things, and we decided on Airflow and DBT. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted to put Airflow and DBT on my resume. So
Okay.
that was
Resume-driven development.
yeah, exactly. So it was like, and it's also easier to convince, management of those tools because you're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, see, everyone is using them. It's less risk, let's say. But when you actually like, if you've worked in environments where you've actually used those tools, that's where you realize, like the downfalls and like, the headaches and stuff. And with products like that, because they're so mature and the companies are so big, they're not as flexible as a smaller company, as a startup, to actually address issues and changes. They have to release a completely new product, like DBT Fusion, for example, or they need to do a big migration and fix all of those things. But they have a lot of technical debt. And that was actually one of the reasons why the co-founders of Bruin, Burak and Sabri, started building Bruin from scratch with the idea of like fixing and addressing all of those issues, because they worked in a really big company for I think 6-7 years using Airflow. Like they were creating the entire infrastructure for Airflow, and they also set up DBT and everything like there. So they had firsthand experience with all of the pain points of it, and that's why they decided, hey, let's just build a product from scratch that addresses all of these issues. And Sabri actually as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, just for the record, I don't have anything against Airflow or DBT. They're great tools, but sometimes it makes sense to like properly evaluate the tools, like set aside this resume-driven development thing, and then think, okay, what does really work for my situation, for my company size, right? Do I really have enough developers to maintain? And especially if you're writing from scratch, this was the case in my previous company. Because yeah, it's cool when you implement everything from scratch. You can go to a conference and talk about this, right? How I implement the data platform. But then at the end, you spend so much time implementing this instead of solving business problems, and then you should ask yourself, like, was it worth it? Like, because maybe I would have invested this time doing something else that would be better for the company, right? But this is just an aside comment. So the particular set of tools can be very different from company to company, right? And then should be evaluated on the individual basis.
Absolutely.
I just want to add one thing there, because
Oh, we have
Leandro
multiple people.
asks,
Hi.
hey,
Sorry, I didn't
Alexey.
realize you're here. Nice
Yeah,
to see you.
yeah. Thanks.
How did you sneak
So
in?
Leandro asks, at what point Bruin would fall short compared to the others? Compared to DBT or the others, it wouldn't fall short, but compared to Airflow, there is a fundamental difference. So Bruin is closer to a transformation library framework. So that's why if you want to have dynamic pipelines, Bruin wouldn't allow it, neither DBT, neither SQL Mesh. But Airflow and Dexter and Prefect can allow you to do that. Besides of that, you can do anything you want with Bruin instead of you using all of them. And that's the reason actually why we started. I mean, I used all of these tools. I personally didn't like gluing the things together. That's why we started Bruin, so that you can do end-to-end everything.
Okay, since you're here, maybe you can say a few words about yourself. And also, since as we just learned that you're one of the co-founder of Bruin, you can tell us the story how this thing appeared to be, because so we heard a part of it from Arsalan that you were working at a big company and you weren't happy with some of the ways things were done. So you decided to implement it yourself. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, sure. So hey everyone, I'm Sabri. As Alexey says, I'm one of the co-founders of Bruin. I worked at many different companies as a data scientist. I used many different tech stacks. Also, I did some consulting as side business, so I had exposure of lots of things. I worked at a great company, King, Candy Crush, and they had an amazing data platform team. That platform enabled me to do lots of things much more easier compared to my previous experiences. And after King, I moved to other companies and the problem was still not solved. DBT was pretty new back at the time, by the way. Most of the companies were trying to solve the orchestration problem with Jenkins. Airflow. Even Airflow was pretty new there. So I come from the Jenkins or even previous cron job times. So once I saw the infra at King, it was so comfortable, and I didn't want to go back again. And that was the reason actually why we built Bruin. I used DBT as well, but it didn't solve my problems because you cannot ingest data, you cannot run Python, and eventually you need to run Python in your pipelines.
Yeah, especially if you're a data scientist like you, right?
Exactly. So, and I don't like the silos between data engineering, data analysts, and data scientists. I think all the data people should be full stack data people. Of course, there are stronger sides, like some person can be better at ingestion or SQL. Some person might be better at modeling. But still, a data team is a data team. I don't like silos. And to be able to remove silos, you have to merge the tooling as well. I hope it explains everything.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Nice to see you, by the way. I think I mentioned
Thank
that.
you.
So there is a question that the company uses S3 plus Temporal. Temporal, I think it's Temporal IO, right? For those who don't know, Temporal. So this is the tool. The focus more is on durability rather than workflow orchestration, but they can do that too. So company uses S3 plus Temporal running algorithms and data transformations, and then moving it to ClickHouse. Can Bruin replace all of them? Will it take care of heavy algorithms? I think we partly answered that because the example that Arsalan gave was about running some machine learning things on Bruin, right? It was the cloud example. But yeah, maybe you can answer that fully.
I have to ask, how do you use Temporal there? Without auditing what you do or without understanding what you do, it is impossible to answer. But if these are not dynamic pipelines, but proper pipelines, yes, it can replace all of it, except ClickHouse, of course.
But then Bruin can connect to ClickHouse, right?
Yeah, of course. So Bruin can read from S3 to both. It can do both ETL, but also ELT. So you can read the data, transform it, load it to ClickHouse, or you can just dump the data to ClickHouse and then transform it. And also, what do you mean by heavy algo? Is it something like
Could be
machine
like,
learning stuff?
let's say
Or
machine learning, yeah.
yeah, it can handle that. You can do anything you can do with Python in Bruin. And not only Python, actually, it can even run R, which is not cool anymore. But
Okay, why do you have R there?
there are some companies still using R,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I used it a lot. So half the king was using Python, half the
Okay.
other king, half was using R.
That's the language I started my journey into data science with. But then my first work was already Python. Anyways, and Temporal, so you talked about these dynamic workflows, right? In Temporal, when you don't know how many steps you need to execute, you can just build your workflow dynamically, right? Can you also do this in Bruin?
Not exactly in the same way. You can hack it by using Bruin API or by running Bruin processes with Python, but not natively. So you would lose the lineage there.
I was going to actually kind of argue against what Sabri said earlier. Like Bruin doesn't support dynamic pipelines out of the box. That's true. Out of the box, it doesn't, but it does have the building blocks to allow for it. So you can kind of like hack around it and like build your pipelines dynamically and create trigger pipelines. Like one example is like if you want like to trigger pipelines based like on a multi-tenant kind of infrastructure where you want to like trigger the pipeline for a specific client only, you can actually do that and have like, very specific dynamic like runs triggered at different times too. So it is possible. It requires a little bit more manual kind of like configurations.
Yeah, thank you. So this question has been here for quite some time. I'm not going to spend a lot of time answering this question, but since it was asked, was this blog post I recently wrote where I actually go through the thought process of how I come up with project ideas. I'm going to just share it here. So then you can read it. I don't want to spend time on this right now. So this is something I can answer at the end, but so another question, I go to ChatGPT quite often while solving the homework. Is this acceptable? So before I answer, I want to know your opinion about that. What do you think?
I think don't use ChatGPT, but use Cursor, Claude. Go if you are using ChatGPT to solve coding problems, you are living in the last year or 2 years ago, not in 2026. And don't forget to connect the MCPs or somehow expose all the documentation, I think. But still, it is important that you understand the output of the code, I think.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you will just lose the track of what you're doing.
Well, like, because ChatGPT is not so powerful as Cursor, maybe it's actually better because, like, you are kind of forced to understand what is happening because you need to copy paste things. So I don't have a strong opinion about that. Sometimes you just want to get things done, right? And then you just say, "Hey, Cursor, figure this out," and then you come 15 minutes later and everything works, and you might not even care like how exactly it's implemented inside, depending on use case, of course. But here, ChatGPT kind of forces you to go back and forth. And then, Arsalan, what do you think? Like in general, what's
Uh,
your opinion about using AI?
Yeah, I was a little bit late to the AI kind of driven development, like especially the agents and stuff. Like I was using ChatGPT up until 6 months ago, just generating like code snippets and like copy pasting things over. But then I realized like how to use the agents properly, give them the context and all of that stuff. So I think it's really important. One thing I will say about like ChatGPT is that if it's I don't know, like even with like bigger tools like DBT, Airflow, and stuff, or like I will use BigQuery as an example. Like I would a lot of times ask ChatGPT a question about BigQuery, and it would give me the wrong function, or it didn't know that a function actually exists inside BigQuery. So because it gives you an answer very confidently, you just assume that it knows everything, it knows the context, it's reading the documentation, all of that stuff. But there's no way to actually be sure about that. That's why it's better to use an agent that is connected to an MCP, whether it's for example, BigQuery's MCP. And when you ask it a question, you know that it's actually cross-referencing the documentation and giving you the proper answer. Otherwise, it's just going to hallucinate, give you the wrong terminology, give you the wrong function name, and you will just like, it will give you a headache because you're like, oh, I got this answer, I'm running it, it's giving me an error. It's just like a never-ending cycle. So
Yeah, well, I must admit, ChatGPT became very good at citing references. So like sometimes it does still hallucinate things that comes up with things that don't exist. But then you say, hey, like do proper research before answering, and then like you kind of have to bring it to its face and say, hey, like here, not right. Do your job better, and then it does.
yeah.
But my opinion, in general, using AI is acceptable for homework in all our courses that we have. The only thing I ask you is to not just blindly copy paste or blindly, like, I don't know, open Claude Code and say, hey, solve this homework, because it may backfire, right? So one thing is like, here, you're here to learn things, right? If you're learning, as long as you're learning, you can use whatever tool you want. But if you're not learning and you're just delegating this learning to AI, then what are you doing here? I don't know. That's just a rhetorical question. So maybe you know better why you're doing this because it helps you with some things. But like I'm for use it in any way you want, as long as it's helpful for you, and you should also understand what is happening. And then there is also a funny story that I want to share about over-reliance on AI. So I was using Claude Code to integrate Bruin content into the module, and typically we create homework as a part of that. And I didn't realize that Claude Code was extremely helpful, and it created homework as a part of the transitioning, because like I was using it to help me copy paste content from this and then structure it in different files, and I didn't even realize that it was doing some extra work. So that I should have been more careful. So this is how over-reliance on AI can sometimes backfire. This was a simple example, but sometimes, yeah, you have to check what it's doing. Otherwise, you don't really know, right? And then, yeah, in this sense,
Here,
ChatGPT. Yeah, sorry.
Here, sorry for Alex. What I do is I always make AI review its code as well. And also, if you have linters, validators, anything that proves that it works, or unit
Yeah.
test, integration test. For Bruin, it doesn't make sense, but the integration test, I mean. If you can validate your output somehow, AI works great. Just make sure that it reviews.
Yeah. Okay, so this question, different results between dbt core and cloud. You're probably still doing homework, or maybe I don't think it's a leftover from the previous session. So here we are not talking about that. It's better to ask this question in Slack. So please do that. Sorry for just disregarding it, but Slack would be a way better place where you can also share extra context, like what exactly you run, and then we can help you debug it. Then I want to take this one, OOT, I think out of topic, right? What metrics evaluate, what metrics to evaluate, to use to evaluate data architecture, especially ETL or pipelines, to check if everything is on track? I'm not sure if it's completely out of topic, because I think we have two very experienced people who can help answer this question.
What metrics, data architecture, especially ETL? I mean, I think it really depends. I feel like I'm not exactly sure what the scenario is here. But I think I would categorize things as like two different ways. One is like at the raw level, like at the when you're ingesting data, you want to look at things from like volume level, like are we getting the volume that we expect? Are there any corrupted data points? You do some of the kind of like column checks, nulls, like extreme values, outliers, things like that. And then you have your middle layer where you're looking at the metadata of the pipeline. So you want to look at what do our pipeline runs look like? Were there any failures? You look at kind of like the metrics and the metadata of your pipelines itself. And then on the kind of analytics side of things, it's more going to be context driven. So here's where, for example, you can build custom checks using Bruin, where you can even create unit tests using those custom checks where you say, okay, this query needs to run in order for this quality to be
Probably talking about this one, right? So this part, the data quality.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that part is much more context heavy. It's very like business driven, and you have to understand what are the business requirements, and that's like the logic. You're essentially testing the logic of the query itself as well. So those are kind of the three different areas where I would say you want to have quality checks, you want to have some metrics that you're constantly monitoring as a data engineer.
Do you have some dashboards that you already have in cloud, in the cloud version, that when I run the pipeline, I can see the health of my pipeline, like how long it takes, like all these kind of things?
Yeah. And there's also cost reports too, which is really important, especially when you're working in a bigger team and you want to monitor your costs. So you can see everything at the pipeline level, asset level. You can see how much they're costing. You check for cost spikes. You can even get alerts for them, and also for data sizes too. So if a table, if the size all of a sudden jumps up or down, you want to get alerted. So something probably happened there. Either data was deleted or duplicates were created or something happened. So having those types of metrics and monitoring is really important too.
Maybe I can show it very quick just to give an idea if I'm allowed to share screen.
Yeah, please.
I sent a request.
Yeah, you should be able to do this.
Now, I guess you can see that now.
Yeah.
So on the right side, you can see how many rows are there for that specific table every day. So we are profiling them regularly, daily, hourly, based on your request. So if there's any anomalies, you are notified. The same thing, it can be done for the columns as well. So for example, booking ID column, what % of the rows are now? What is the average, mean, median, minimum, maximum, standard deviation, and count distinct? So we are profiling them actively and sending notifications to you if there's something wrong with it there. That's, I think, the answer to you. And the other thing is you can also see how much does it cost to create that table and how many times it's used. These are more like the governance, not the reliance part, but they help you to understand the problems most of the time.
Okay, so I guess to summarize what you said, we need, first of all, operational metrics, right? To see how, like, is it up and things like that, right? And then performance metrics, how fast it runs, things like that. And quality metrics, all this data quality stuff we discussed, like statistics, mean, median, whatnot. And then cost metrics, right? So that should cover pretty much everything when it comes to ETL, ELT pipelines.
Also, we should never forget about the quality checks, but predefined ones. This column cannot be null, this column has to be unique, positive, blah, blah. Or there might be some enums fields, so you might want to ensure that the enums are correct as well.
Mm-hmm. I think since you're sharing your screen, you have some stuff on data lineage, right? So what is that? What exactly, why do I want to use it? And how does it look like? And like, what's the use case?
So yeah, so for example, here you can see for that specific asset, what are the upstream assets? So what do I rely on to be able to create this one? And what are the other assets that are using it? Why is it useful? So if I make a change on that table, I need to know which other tables are affected. I can see them very quickly. And also, if it's a big team, you might want to see who should you notify. Let's say these 3 tables belong to me. 2 belong to Arsalan, 2 belong to Alexey. But I don't know them because it might be a huge organization. So you can see here, if I make a change on that table, I should notify these people, or I should know that they are consuming it. It is the first step. The second thing, you can even see it on the column level. So let's say the coach name field. I don't know where it comes and where it goes when I'm writing only SQL. But with that feature, it also exists in the VS Code, by the way, in the local extension. You can see which other tables are affected if I make a change here. And in that screen, you don't see that, but if the BI tool has an API, like Looker, Tableau, and Metabase and others, you can also see that if I make a change on that table, which dashboards will be affected. So, and that's the point where most of the time you are exposing your output to the business. So you know that you don't break anything for the business people, the CEO, the product manager, the business operations, blah, blah. I guess that answers it.
Yeah, well, the main use case is just to know who is owning upstream and downstream, right? Upstream, I mean, things that depend on, well, what's the difference? Anyways, like there are some things that depend on you and there are some things you depend on, right? And then in both cases, you want to know who this belongs to, what kind of data is there. So you want to track, like from this thing on the dashboard, you want to track down track back everything to the source, right? And then like if some number is off, then you want to know how exactly you arrived at this number, right? So you want to know the all the steps that you took in order to arrive at this number.
Yep, that's true.
Cool.
I'm stopping sharing now.
Okay, yeah, we should stop now. I want to talk lastly, I'm trying to find the link. So everyone who's going to use Bruin for their projects, they are going to participate in a raffle, right? So they can win Cloud Code subscription, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so for anyone that is going to, so a lot of people have already done the this module, have done the homework and stuff. But for the final project, if you choose to use Bruin for your project, you can just once you've created the project, send us a link to your Git repo with a project and everything, and we will give you a 1 month free subscription to Cloud Pro. And if you choose to share it in our Slack community, and if you get a lot of engagement and stuff, the top 3 most engaged posts, we will give them a full year subscription. So that's the criteria.
And there might be one surprise reward as well that is not announced yet.
I'm frantically trying to find the link right now. I don't have it. I'll send it to Telegram and also include it in the description of this video. So you'll have it where you can read more about that. There are a few questions I didn't answer, like are we going to use AWS for the course? No, I'm not going to record extra videos. We want to teach you the concepts. And then with these concepts, like be it GCP, AWS, Azure, whatever, like when you're at work, you'll have to learn new tools anyways. So like yeah, I'm trying to quickly answer the question that would require more time, but no, we don't plan to switch to AWS. For other questions, yeah, I can maybe try to answer them in Slack. I also promised to answer this last question. Just really curious, you guys do amazing course, and that is 4 consecutive years for free. How you manage budget? What is your income source? And I want to use this question as a way to say thank you to our sponsors and this company, one of them. So because of Bruin, because of Kestra, because of DLT Hub, yeah, thank you. They make it possible to run this course and to offer it to all of you. So please join me in thanking Bruin specifically and other sponsors in making it possible to offer this course to you for free. And for me personally, I really enjoy running these courses and really enjoy sharing content with everyone. And because of Bruin, they empower me to do this. So I want to thank them and thank a lot for making it possible.
Thank you.
Okay. I have another stream in 3 minutes, so I kind of have to hurry. So on that note, I need to finish. Thank you, Arsalan, Sabri. It was cool. Thanks everyone for joining us today. It was a really cool session. You still have 1 week. I'll share the link to this code thing in description and also in Telegram. So keep an eye and use Bruin for your project. So that's all. Well, have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.